And thanks for doing this.
No problem.
Thank
How are
you.
you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Great, I'm good. Thank you so much.
Good,
Thanks
good.
for
Wale, hi.
So floor is yours, Olumide.
Okay, so thank you guys for coming for another H1 Teach One, the February edition. The H1 Teach One is a monthly presentation which allows us to bring in an alumnus member of the alumni community where they will talk about a subject matter which they have a lot of interest, knowledge, passion, and expertise on, which naturally allows us to be aware. It encourages a lot of interactive learning, and it also allows us to open doors for discussion. It also really encourages us to grow. It really makes us grow and develop because we believe that each alumnus member that we bring will be able to add value to us, and then also would also have a lot of would also be able to learn from what they're saying, and when the roles are reversed as well, they would also be able to learn from us. Today we have a resident software engineer who's had 20 plus years experience in the industrial software engineering field. I'm talking of the one and only Bunmi Odumade. Bunmi she worked actually recently in utility API. She's worked in so many places, MPR, Accenture, Capital One. She's also the co-founder of Nexercise, which is a mobile startup fitness business. She's also won several awards. She's also made a lot of power moves. The recent one was the Essence Festival, where she featured in Essence magazine and also in Black Enterprise. Bunmi is very, very passionate about, collaborating with organizations that deal with youth mentoring. She also advises people who want to do STEM career programs, and she's also somebody who's worked in a lot of adjunct faculties in a lot of colleges in the US. Bunmi is a holder of a Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering. She's also a Master of Science in Computer Science, and she's also got an MBA in Wharton University. So you can see there already that there's a lot of world of experience and knowledge crammed in. So I would indulge all of you to allow Bunmi to educate all of us. So I'm definitely looking forward to it, and yeah, so I think we're in for a really nice time. So Bunmi, over to you.
Thank you, Olumide. So it's nice to see everybody. I saw some of you at the reunion last year. I talk to Shade all the time, but it's definitely nice to be with you all today. So I'm going to share my screen and start the presentation in slideshow mode. So today I'm going to talk about, I'm going to move this a little bit, transitioning to careers in tech and software. And so today's agenda, I'm going to initially talk about some technology trends and overview, and then I will talk specifically about software, which is the area that I am more experienced in, and give advice about transitioning to a software career. No tech presentation today would be complete without at least mentioning AI. So I will introduce a little bit of AI. And if we have time, I may talk about my path. But today I really wanted more to focus on giving information for people who might change paths. So if we run out of time, and we can skip that. And I want to stress that today's presentation is still going to be an intro. Software and tech are both very broad, and I don't know everything. I know some things, but I don't know everything. And you can feel free to ask questions along the way or at the end. I definitely save time for questions at the end, but if you do want to ask questions along the way, please raise your hand. It's a little hard to read the chat when you're presenting. Okay. So Olumide, talked about my bio, so I won't repeat this, but I will point out in the second to last bullet, I do constantly seek ways to be involved in organizations that mentor youth and or advise people who are interested in STEM careers. So when Olumide asked me 2 weeks ago if I would do this, I said, of course, and so I'm happy to be here. So as you know, technology is everywhere. Even if you were on a desert island, it will probably find you because you can't run away from technology. So these are just a few jokes about how technology is everywhere and that it also changes. So one thing I want to note before I get too deep, I want to point out software people, we cannot agree on things. We cannot agree on what to call ourselves. When I was an individual contributor, I was called a developer, a coder, an engineer. It changes. We also cannot agree when we're coding where the brackets go. Does it go on the same line or the next line? People really argue about this. We definitely cannot agree on what the best programming languages and frameworks are. So I point that out for two reasons. One, the images and sources that I have in this presentation, those are people's opinions. They're usually knowledgeable opinions, and they may even have done some research, but you may find sources that say something different, and that's okay. You'll also see a lot of names of software things, and software is broad. It's okay if you don't know what they mean, but of course, if it's something that you are really interested in, you can ask me. Okay. So as we know, technology keeps changing. There was a time when the pencil was cool technology. It's hard to imagine, but now things have changed a lot. We've used textbooks. Now people use ebooks. We still use textbooks. We can use both. We had chalkboards. Now there's interactive whiteboards. And of course, we all have our phones, right? So it's changed a lot, and it's going to continue to change. Also, in terms of the relationship of technology and business, that has also evolved. In the 60s, before I think any of us were born, technology and business were completely separate. In the 80s, they started to come closer together. And in the 90s, around when I first got my first job, some businesses used technology, some didn't. And the ones that did, technology was their main differentiator. And nowadays, a lot of times, every business has technology, and for some businesses, technology is their entire business. So I said technology and business are intertwined. You may not know that, in high school, my parents actually wanted me to be an accountant because they said every company needs one, even if they're struggling. And that was true then and now. But now it's definitely true that almost every company needs tech somehow, especially software. If you don't have the software engineers in your company, you will probably need to outsource it. My first job after my master's was at a paint company called Valspar. This is a picture of the actual building in Minneapolis. Okay. Now, I want to stress that software is just one part of technology. It's the one I'm going to talk about the most today because it's the one I have the most experience in. But most of the things we use have a combination of hardware and software. So hardware are usually the things that you can see and touch and feel. And software is the code inside the hardware that makes it do something interesting and useful. So this image talks about the difference between hardware and software. I'm not going to read all of it, but I'm going to focus on the last row, which gives examples of hardware, which, keyboard, mouse, monitor, printer, other things that go into the computer, and of course, our cell phones. And on the software, this is the code that's making it do something interesting. So again, on the last line, there could be Microsoft Word or Google Docs for creating documents, PowerPoint or Google Slides like I'm using for this presentation. And then of course, an example we can all relate to, WhatsApp, which lives inside of our phone. Okay. So this slide has some software trends over the years. It's also from 2019, which in software time is already old. And don't focus on every single circle. What I wanted to point out is that software evolves, and what is a trend changes from time to time. And also some of the trends are short-lived and some last a long time, probably forever. In the late 1990s, methods was establishing the foundation. We still use methods today. Also like in the mid 2000s, people started to do large scale agile, instead of waterfall, and we're still doing a lot of that today. Game design, CMMI, I'm not sure how much that's being used, but things evolve. And this is one of the reasons why software becomes a very broad field. Okay. So this image is taken from an article in 2020, excuse me, and it's talking about what the author thought were software trends in 2020. And we're not going to go through all of this, but you get an idea that there were multiple trends. There are things here that maybe seem familiar to you. Maybe artificial intelligence does. Maybe you've heard of cybersecurity. And there are some things that may not be as much. Like, unless you're really in the field, most people don't know what microservices are. And there are companies that are actually getting away from microservices. This is another image from an article written in May 2023 about software trends for 2024. Some of the items on here are the same as you've seen on the last slide, like artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, and a lot of these items actually. But there's other items on here that were not on the previous slide, like software quality standards. So my point is that software continues to evolve, and people make predictions about what they're seeing as trends. Okay. So now I will explain some technology things, because to see if you want to, okay, whoops, sorry. I looked at the chat. Let's go back. To know if you want to switch into software, it helps to understand some of the technology. So I will start with an intro of client server. Client-only applications exist, server-only applications exist, but most applications follow a client-server architecture. So you can see from the image, you have some client, in this case, it's a laptop, and a server. Usually it's going to be multiple servers, and code is going to exist on both of those. And the client code makes a request to the server code because of some action. It could be a manual action like clicking on a button. It could be an automatic action like saying at 9 a.m. every morning, tell me to start work, And the client sends a request to the servers, which are someplace. The servers do something with the request based on the code that they have. And then the servers send a response back to the client, and the client receives the response. Now, these series of steps can happen multiple times. It can be multiple times a second, multiple times a day. The reason that this is powerful is because it can be happening on various pieces of code. So expanding on client-server technology, nowadays, most clients access the internet to get to the servers. And by nowadays, I mean probably the last 20 years or more. Clients can be multiple things: laptops, smartphones, computers, and also smartwatches, IoT device, Internet of Things devices, and more. They're going through the internet to access servers. Now, there's many kinds of servers. This image shows about 10, and I'm not sure it's complete, but I circled in orange the ones that I think you hear about the most: web servers, application servers, database servers, and I maybe should have also circled mail server. But you can start to get really deep and keep expanding these things. Okay, so I want to talk about when you're coding, developing, engineering, call it development. there's front-end development, back-end development, and full-stack development. Using the car analogy, front-end are the things that you can see. It's the parts that you can interact with and tell it to do something. So like on a car, it's, the beautiful outside with the paints, etc. The back end are the parts that you don't see, but it's what makes the thing function and do the thing that you want. So like in a car, it's all the stuff under the hood, under the car, and you don't see, but without that, the car wouldn't run. So, to the right, front end is the visual and interactive parts of a site or an app, and the back end is needed to do something, and full stack refers to both. So if you're coding both front end and back end, then you're called a full stack engineer or full stack developer. Now, most applications need both front end and back end. Again, there are some applications that can be back end only, like if they're doing transactional processing, and I don't know that I can think of any applications that would need front end only, but maybe they exist. But usually you need both. So like with the car where you turn the steering wheel, that's the front end, and the car turns because of the back end. An example in software is an email app. You click a button, which is the front end, and the email sends to the back end. And software tech stacks. Tech stacks are a combination of technologies used to build things. I keep saying software is broad, right? These are just two examples of the tech stack for two companies. On the left-hand side, see this company has it split up by their client-side technologies and server side. Each of those icons is a specific type of technology that is used. So you can see how many technologies go into building their app. On the right is an example for another company, which happens to also have a mobile app. And each of those icons are the technologies that they use on the front end, back end, databases, DevOps, and their mobile apps. Okay. So in terms of programming languages, there are many popular programming languages now, and these are not the same languages from before. So most of my career, I was actually coding in Java, which as you can see is like in the middle of this graph now, only 30%. So this changes. And this just shows some of the popular programming languages used now. Notice that JavaScript is at the top. And if you know that building web pages needs HTML and CSS, if you ever knew when I had motherlandnigeria.com, I use a lot of HTML and CSS to build that. That is still a popular programming language. And I'll also note Python here just because I'm going to mention it later. Okay. Now, the exact languages you use depend on which part of the app or software that you're building. I don't know how current this graph is, but I still liked it because it showed the various technologies and the purposes of using them. So for example, if you're doing front-end development, you might use a lot of JavaScript, Elm, and TypeScript. If you're doing back-end development, you still use JavaScript, but now you might use Scala, Python, Go, and Ruby. If you're building mobile, you'll use even different technologies still. If you're doing game development, it says TypeScript and Unity, which never heard of Unity before this diagram. Software is that broad. Okay. Now, notice that on the last few slides, there was a mention of JavaScript. It was listed as one of the top technologies. And JavaScript on its own can be broken down into all these different versions and frameworks. Remember what I said? We cannot agree on what's the best, so we keep making new ones. So I've used vanilla JavaScript in the past, but I've actually never used any of these flavors of JavaScript, though I've managed engineers that do. Okay. And so far, I've been talking mostly about the code, but when you're developing software, the processes and the frameworks also matter. So some examples, how you store your source code so that multiple people can be working on it at the same time without stepping on each other, how you test through quality assurance, how you do user research and prototyping to be sure that what you're building is what people will eventually use, how you do the whole development process. Oops, sorry. Let someone in the waiting room, and my mouse always advances slides easily, so I live with it. So I was at development processes where nowadays a lot of people use Agile so they can get working software out there and get feedback or money while they're building the rest, versus my first few jobs were waterfall, where you had to wait years to release things. How you do software design patterns and architectural processes so that you are following tried and true techniques and not reinventing the wheel. How you increase the frequency and reliability of software. You may have heard of things such as continuous integration, continuous delivery, DevOps. Those are all ways to increase both the frequency and reliability. And then maybe not as interesting, but very important, are things like security and privacy and compliance. So there's a lot of software principles when you do start to get into coding. The one I wanted to highlight here is, I think I've said at least once, maybe more than once, that we should not reinvent the wheel. And so one of the many principles of software that I like is the concept of reuse. Because when you reuse, you can get your own applications and things done faster. And you also keep your engineers more interested, because engineers like to work on interesting and innovative things. And you may have heard of the cloud, or you may have heard of things as a service. And both of these help with reuse. There's a lot on this slide. So can you see the mouse as I'm moving? Cool. So follow along with my mouse. All these things are needed to have software run and scale. Here, suppliers are the cloud service providers, which include Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure, Oracle, and more. So early on, if you developed software, you had to have all of these things to do the on-premises and legacy stuff. You had to have your own hardware, install the operating system, install containers and runtime, and then put your applications, functions, and configuration on it. So you may still hear people today talk about on-prem or legacy, and that's what they mean, that they had to have everything somewhere in the business. And then cloud providers came along and said, hey, we can provide some of these things so you don't have to worry about them. And so one of those things, infrastructure as a service, the cloud providers are providing the hardware, but you as a company or individual, you're still providing the rest of these things. And that helps because, like, now, if I need to upgrade a database, I can do that with a click of a few buttons and have it done in minutes, versus in the old days when you would have to order it, install it, and do all those things. It's especially useful for startups to have this. I'm going to skip containers and go to platform as a service. In this case, the cloud provider is providing the hardware, the operating system, the containers, and the runtime. And all you have to provide are the applications, functions, and configuration. And most cloud providers will have a combination of these. So some of their services may be more infrastructure as a service, some will be more platform, some will be function. And then I'm going to go all the way to the right to software as a service, where the provider is providing everything except the configuration. An example of this is if you use an online email system like Gmail or Hotmail. They've made the whole software. All you're doing is maybe updating your settings to fit your needs. So you may have noticed that I like analogies. So I'm going to use Pizza Party as a service because I could not find jollof rice as a service. So if you're having a pizza party at home, you're providing everything: the electric, gas, oven, fire, pizza, the beer, the friends, conversation. That is the equivalent to having like a traditional on-prem legacy system, because you are providing everything. But if you will go to a communal kitchen, the communal kitchen might provide the electricity or gas and the oven, and you're providing the fire, pizza, beer, friends, and conversation. That's the equivalent of having infrastructure as a service. They're providing a few of the things, you're bringing more of it. I'll jump to platform as a service. This is like going to a place and bringing the pizza home. So they are providing the electricity, gas, oven, fire, pizza. You're taking it home, providing the beer, friends, conversation, etc. And, and then I'll again move to software as a service. This is like if you go to a place that offers a party, they provide everything. Actually, yeah, they provide, and they also, and this is like an example where you gave them a guest list, so they invite your friends. So they're providing everything. All you have to do is show up and provide the conversation. Okay, so this helps with reuse and also helps people develop things fast. Now, I want to point out that software engineering is not the only job in tech. This image is from a friend of mine. She posted it on LinkedIn a week or two ago, and the list that she provided is still not a full list. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to go through a few. So you'll see, for example, that she mentions product manager. Product is one of the type of jobs in tech that doesn't usually need coding, but is very important. Engineers want to code. They don't want to, they don't want to sell or talk to people, or, we have to do some of that. But, product owners, product managers, they take the job of understanding what the stakeholders need and working with the engineers to get that to the stakeholders. So, for example, they know that if you're building a government website, these are what the government users need. And the engineers work with them to translate those needs into code, and the product owner might continue to get input from the stakeholders. And I mentioned that a lot of companies do Agile now. Scrum leaders and Agile coaches help teams work so that those teams themselves are operating like a well-oiled machine. So this also doesn't usually need coding. It needs understanding processes, being good with people, and, bringing everybody together. And, career coaches, and the person who posted this is a career coach. Career coach, more and more people are looking for coaching from people who have been there and done that. And so if you've been in engineering for a while, you can be a career coach to help others. One thing I didn't put on the left, but I'll point out is marketer. We need marketers. If you build something and nobody uses it, it's not helpful. You're not going to have fun. The company won't make money, etc. So there are many ways to be in tech, even without being a software engineer or doing coding. And so part of the point to this presentation is switching to software from other fields. And to do that, I'm going to talk about two ways: the learning and the doing. Even though I have a master's in computer science, but I've had many coworkers and even bosses who didn't have any degree in software, not even a bachelor's. They switched fields. And to switch fields, first you have to learn, and then you have to do. In terms of learning, there are multiple ways to do this. There's self-learning that you can do. There's blogs, there's online classroom courses, examples of YouTube, LinkedIn, Udemy. There's so many of them. Some are free and some are paid. But because it's a course, it's usually going to be less than if you were paying an instructor. There are instructor-led classroom courses. This includes, online and offline classroom courses, and also boot camps where they're packing everything that you're learning into a small period of time. And so you learn it faster, and you have to, but you still have to use it. Now, there's a lot of certifications out there, and sometimes those can help you with the learning process or to prove yourself. But not all certifications are not all employers care about certifications. There's some certifications I don't know that any employers care about. So it's worth evaluating whether you're getting the certification for your own learning or to find jobs and go from that. Years ago, when I got certified in Amazon Web Services, that definitely was well received, and people would reach out about, hey, come work with us, But there's other certifications I could get, that, like when I got certified in something called Terraform, most people don't care about that, but I'm glad I did it because it helped me validate my learning. Okay. And it's also important to do. You learn much more from the doing than from the theory. So, and it also helps you solidify the things that you have learned. So when you've started learning or completed learning something, there are ways to apply it, including side projects, volunteer work. Like if you know somebody, if you're learning web pages and you know someone who needs one, volunteering to build it for them can help them, but also provide you with something you can reference as a project. There's internships where companies say, we're going to hire someone who we know is not as experienced, we're going to pay them less, but they're going to get real life experience. And some of these are paid, some are unpaid, but either way, the goal is that they're hoping to give you a chance to get real life experience, and you can learn from that and help them with some things as well. And there's on-the-job training. Like if you're working at a company, but you're in a non-tech role and you want to switch to a tech role, there are companies that will support you in that. And maybe have you spend a few hours shadowing somebody or working on something so that you can get a flavor for it. So I have a lot of advice for switching to software, so I'm gonna go over it in 2 slides. As I've mentioned, there are many ways to learn the technology, but 20 years ago, now it's still gonna often be hard to get the first job. So it's important, if you are switching, to not give up. And the experience takes time and effort. So patience and acknowledging your wins is definitely going to be very important there. And titles in software are very inconsistent. So if you do start to look for a job, focus on the job responsibilities more than the title. And use your network, that's family, friends, people in the field, for jobs, advice, and more. And I've mentioned a few times, software is very wide and it's evolving. So be ready for change. What I'm doing now is very different from what I was doing 5 years ago, and definitely different from what I was doing 20 years ago. And also, if you don't like one part of software, you might like another. Yeah. And once you're in tech, because it's always evolving, you want to find ways to keep up to date. This can include following relevant articles or blogs or experts in the field or whatever works for what you're trying to accomplish. More advice, especially this day, you may have access to global remote jobs. There are companies that will hire from all over the world. Your careers may also evolve. So I used to do full stack development, and now I do mostly infrastructure. And I had those slides on the cloud, and I talked about legacy and on-prem. I've never worked on on-prem, So I was able to get straight into the cloud. And, slight typo, I want to say money should not be the only motivator, because we all need money, but aim to like what you do, because there are many ways to like the work and still get paid for it. I'm intentionally not a doctor because as much as I would like to help people, I can't handle blood, right? So, but, I'm in software, which I do enjoy, and it pays the bills, But when you're starting out, salaries can be low. So especially when starting out, keep that in mind. And mentorship is very important. So get a mentor and be a mentor. There's a high chance, I've had interns that were able to mentor other people. So no matter what level you are, you can mentor somebody. And mentorship is all important at any stage. I have mentors, I am a mentor, and I'm always going to have both. Okay. Now, I want to caution that tech is not always secure. in the 2000, around the year 2000, you may have heard of the dot bomb or the dot-com crash. And at that time, many companies shut down permanently. Many people, including me, were laid off back then. Things turned around, but in the last few years, things have again been hard in tech. It's not even the end of February, and already this year, more than 40,000 people have been laid off in tech in the US alone. In 2023, the estimates are that 260,000 tech people were laid off. This includes large companies, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, all the large companies. And my suspicion is that this doesn't even include the small companies, because I know my last company and the company some of my friends work at, they're not even listed on sites like layoffs.fyi because it doesn't make news. And I actually know some people who are leaving tech for other fields. I do think things will bounce back. I hope they do, but it is good to know that, things are tough in tech right now. So, like I said, no talk would be complete without at least mentioning artificial intelligence. So, I will explain that artificial intelligence is a very broad term. Within artificial intelligence, you have machine learning. Within that, you have deep learning. Within that, you have generative AI. Sometimes people use these terms interchangeably, but they're not the same things. So I will share the slides after, but you can understand more about what the relationship between those various areas are. And artificial intelligence may change some jobs and job requirements. Some people think it's going to take away jobs. Most people think it's just going to change jobs. We shall see which happens. I myself am starting to learn more about this. And one of my friends who I told about this presentation said it may be hard to get into AI without some existing tech knowledge, but it's worth trying, if you're interested. And I mentioned outsourcing earlier. I want to point out that most companies cannot have all their needs met in-house. It's not a good way towards profitability. And I also mentioned the idea of reuse in software. This may be one of the reasons you notice outsourcing as a trend in both 2020 and 2024. Outsourcing can mean outsourcing the software components. So, for example, if you're building an e-commerce site, using some existing way for the payment processing. Why build that yourself? It can also mean outsourcing for talent. So, for example, having contractors or consultants. This is where, companies like Accenture have built a whole business out of this. And nowadays, there are companies who will say, we don't really need a full-time CTO or a full-time VP. We will get fractional VPs, fractional CTOs. So these are people who are working for them part-time and are not employees. And, that's outsourced. So if you do want to transition into software, unlike after high school, where we were starting from similar place, not the same, but similar, the transition plan now would be unique because everyone here has some experience in something. And so a good transition plan will consider where you are, both your profession and the knowledge that you have, and also where you want to go. Software is broad, so you're not going to be the software guru and know everything. I do not know everything by any stretch. And if you don't know where you want to go, you can have more conversations about that. But if you were to say, okay, I'm a lawyer who wants to build web pages, that's going to be a different transition plan than if you say, okay, I'm a doctor who wants to go into cloud, and then a good transition plan will also consider your initial thoughts on how to get there. Like maybe what courses you would take, who you should add to your network, things like that. And that may change as you are following the plan because things change. People still ask me, they're like, well, I just want to do something now. What should I do? If you need an answer now, I tell people, if in doubt, learn Python. I don't know it myself, but I know that it's in use a lot. It helps with machine learning. I've heard it's not too difficult to learn as a first language. So that's the answer I give if I have to give one. Okay. Looking at time, I have some slides here about my own path, but we can end here and I can go to Q&A, or we can talk about my path. What's your preference? Okay. So it's brief because you knew me from high school. You knew that I enjoyed science and math. Parents wanted me to be an accountant, but I convinced them I wanted to go into engineering. So I got a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. I had one computer class during that degree, and I hated it initially because I had a semicolon in the wrong place, and there were 200 errors, And but by the end of the course, I was even more curious about computers, especially software, and I wanted to make computers do what I wanted them to do. There's a joke that computers don't do what you want them to do, it does what you tell them to do. So I wanted to bridge that gap. I'm telling the computer what I want. So I pursued a master's of science in computer science. That was partly for the curiosity, but it was also because at that time, immigrants couldn't get jobs without advanced degrees. So I arguably had no choice, but I enjoyed it. And so I got the master's, was working in software. And then around 1999, I started hearing a lot about Java. And so I learned about it, practiced some things. Let's see, I practiced what I'm telling you all. And I got certified in 1999. Even with my master's in computer science, I think the Java certification opened more doors than the master's. Okay. And, I mentioned software evolves. In grad school, I did mostly Pascal, C, and maybe a little Fortran. At my first job at Valspar, I used mostly Pro C, which is C with SQL. Most of my career, I was doing Java, both the standard edition and the enterprise edition. If you are in the US and you have had to apply for an EIN on the IRS website since 2006, 2007, I was part of the team that built that, and it's still in use to this day. I was using mostly Java technologies. When I was in the startup, we used mostly Groovy on Grails, learned about cloud technologies. I initially coded the iPhone app, but I don't even list that on my skills anymore because I don't remember much about it. And we also had to get someone with more experience to build it better. Again, can't know it all. And most recently, I've been leading infrastructure and engineering teams using cloud technologies and instilling and following DevSecOps processes. And I've mentioned I'm a leader. I actually did not want to be a manager. Around 2003, Accenture asked me to be a manager. I just wanted to code. But thankfully, most of my earlier jobs, it was a combination. I did coding, I did management. Now it varies. I've had some leadership jobs where I'm still, working on the goals and maybe even in the code. I've had some where it's more about the people and the processes. It usually depends on how many people are reporting to you. Like when I was at NPR and I had 18 people reporting to me, there's no time to get into the code at that point. And as a leader, it's still a good idea to keep your tech skills sharp. Even if you can't do the coding, you still understand the reasons, the architecture. The last job I got, I had a coding test in Python, which I mentioned that I don't know Python, but I knew enough technology to be able to debug what they were trying to debug. Okay. And also currently, I'm setting myself up as a career coach for engineering leaders. A lot of people have asked me for advice, and some friends have basically pointed out I'm coaching for free. So I figure I will make a business out of coaching. And that's it. It's a lot of information, so I'm happy to answer any questions. Olumide, you're muted if you're talking.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I just wanted to say that was great. Thank you very much. I think that was, for me, that was very broad and highly informative and very interesting. I'm not really into IT like that, but I can see where I'm going to be able to need, like if I need somebody to employ in the future or something, it's going to really be very, very valuable for me. some of those things that you talked on. So I'm really, really grateful for that. I don't know what anybody else thinks, but yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry I didn't raise my hand.
Oh, that's fine. Let me see, were there any questions in the chat? Oh, Deji provides agile training. Cool.
So,
Yeah, and so this is very broad. If anyone wants to get into a specific area, you're going to need more information. Like I've given hour-long presentations on just the cloud. I taught Agile. I'm a certified Scrum Master. That's expired, but so each almost any of the boxes you see could be either its own presentation or its own boot camp. Yes, Wally.
Yeah, hi, Bunmi. Thanks for that. Very, very interesting, very impressive repertoire you have there. I presently I work in an institute that deals with employing young people either as apprenticeship along the apprenticeship line or straight from university or those stepping into early careers. And one of the fears that they have is this whole AI, the AI thread, particularly with the chat GPT and all of that. Now, not everybody here is going to work in IT or will be involved in IT presently, but not IT, but your line of work, but one way or the other, we are affected by it. So I was just wondering that I know you said there are some risk and factors and all of that, but taking that into consideration, how much do you think that our future is secure under AI, particularly taking our jobs away and doing everything? I mean, like you said, there are some redundancies that AI is just taking the jobs away from people. So for someone who wants to venture into that field, how reassuring can they feel that, oh, okay, I mean, just recently you had the strike in Hollywood with the writers and the all of all worried that, oh, the AI is taking over their job, writing songs and changing voices, and so how worried should someone be in that respect?
Yeah, that's definitely a tough question. And of course, I don't have all the answers, but it's like, for example, this week in LinkedIn news, I saw that Tyler Perry paused construction of a studio because he said, if AI can generate movie scenes, what's the point? And I have a friend who, before I even saw the article about Tyler Perry, had posted something saying, no, Tyler Perry, AI will create some jobs, change some jobs, and yes, eliminate some jobs, but it's not an automatic elimination. And it's right now, like me personally, the parts of AI I'm worried about has less to do with, taking away jobs, which may be a worry, and I'll come back to that, and more to do with like, are they gonna make a video of me that says something I wasn't saying? How is it gonna affect identity theft? Things like that. On the flip side, AI is also still really helping with things like cybersecurity and medical and good things. So in terms of the jobs, it's to be seen. I can't guarantee people to not worry, but I can say, when I was building web pages, there were services, I forget the names, that would build them more easily, but there's still humans building web pages now. So there have been multiple things that come along that were supposed to eliminate jobs, and some things did get eliminated, but some things just changed. In terms of like looking for a job, I know that last year, a lot of my friends were using They tried to use AI for like building resumes and cover letters. And it still didn't work the way they wanted. And I tried ChatGPT for some things, and I'm like, it doesn't sound like me. It's inauthentic, you know. And so I should use ChatGPT more just because I'm in technology, but I use it more to like, not for output, but for its ideas of things, because ChatGPT will still tell you that you cannot 100% trust its output, you know? So it's a complicated question, and it's, you know, everyone's gonna have their opinions. Some of what it's doing, you know, is impressive, it's helpful, especially if it helps the medical. Some of it is a little scary, but I keep hearing engineering leaders say they can still, for example, spot when AI is the reason for an output. And, you know, and I also still see articles that say you will not be able to replace the human element. So I don't know, that wasn't an answer, it's just thoughts, because this is a conversation that is going on everywhere, you know?
Yeah, that's so true. Thank you for that. Cheers.
I have more time if there's more questions.
Hi, Bunmi, I have a question in the chat for you.
Okay. Did I miss it?
Did you might have been sent to you directly?
I'm sorry, I sent it to Shadi. I'm putting it to I need AI in this application. There you go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's the article about the Tyler Perry AR alarm. So the question is, thoughts on owning a laptop? A lot of folks not in tech survive with living on smartphones and tablets. Would you consider acquiring a laptop a requirement to transition? I think if you're going to be coding, you will need a laptop or at least a Chromebook, something where you can enter code. It's gonna be very hard to write code on tablets and smartphones. Now, if you're going into some other fields, like if you're maybe doing the graphic designs for, you know, and not coding, you may be able to, you know, just use, you know, tablets for that. But coding, you need a keyboard, you need to install they call it integrated development environments, which usually takes up more space than a tablet or a phone will have. So you will need a laptop. But in terms of getting a laptop, you know, I have a MacBook because that's, you know, because from when I was doing iPhone design, but getting like a PC laptop maybe not as expensive, and getting a used one may be helpful as long as it has enough memory and you're able to update the operating system. And one of my friends actually has a charity that ships laptops to the needy in other places. So let me make sure, if I'm not fully answering the question, or if there's a follow-up, please do let me know. Okay. Yes, Shei. You're muted if you're talking, Shei.
Yeah.
Hi, Bunmi. How are you? Good to see you after such a very long time.
You too.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes. All right. So, okay. So, was here to just listen and soak up all the information, but there's something you said. You kind of mentioned it twice about AI field.
Go ahead. About AI, what?
About AI in healthcare.
Yes.
And that's of particular interest to me right now. So, could you kind of share some of the things that are going on in that space? And certainly, I'd like to talk more about this if there isn't enough time to go into a deep dive at this point. But what kind of things are going on in AI and healthcare at the moment?
So everything I know about AI in healthcare is going to come from articles, even though one of my sisters is a doctor. And what I remember from those articles is that it can help resolve things faster, or it can help consolidate the information to help with diagnoses. So I don't have a lot of information. I'm actually happy to go dig up the information and have a follow-on conversation, But at this moment, I mainly know from articles that I've read.
Okay, great. Not a problem. Not a problem. So what we're saying here, what I'm hearing you say is that there's quite a bit of information out there, and just need to keep reading and researching. But it is certainly a very exciting time where AI is concerned. I mean, a few people have come across a few things about AI being able to turn 2D images into 3D images. So a flat X-ray can suddenly be 3D, a 3D image, and just be interested to know how to take place.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot, and it's healthcare is a big field. I mean, my only experience with AI in medicine so far, and I mean, you all have mothers or wives, or but like when we go get a mammogram, now there's a way to go 3D imaging with AI, which is supposed to be more helpful in catching potential problems early. But from some of the articles that I've read, there's even more medical advances that AI should hopefully help with. So yeah, it's both exciting and scary. Both things can be true. I'm looking forward to how it helps with healthcare, cybersecurity, and other ways. I'm not looking forward to how it's used for bad means. Yes, Soninda.
I just wanted to join in the conversation that she just asked. Only I'm not in the medical field, but I'm closely associated with people in that field, and I see some of the things they do. And speaking from an AI perspective, especially, I see things from the research standpoint and where AI is headed. I mean, things like research based on cells, say, for example, in the cancer field, monitoring those cells, seeing the cell growth, and being able to project over time. Well, the hope is that over time, depending on, say, for example, the cell they find in a patient, they should be able to project what kind of cancer that's going to become. Mm-hmm. And given the projections they're coming with, be able to come up with the customized treatment at the base level, that can guide them and help them give that specific patient a customized healthcare service towards the cell. So I see a lot of that in what's going on from an AI perspective, and a lot of it to me, I mean, I'm a novice, but just seeing what they do, it's kind of like the predictability of what they're dealing with right now and where it's headed. And then just building a database from there to be able to monitor the different cells or different cancers or different diagnoses that they're coming up with. So there's a lot of work in that field from an AI perspective. So I thought I'll just throw that in.
Thank you so much for providing that information.
You're welcome. Okay, I have another question if no one's going yet. So Bunmi, for those looking to transition, how do they start? What kind of websites or specific classes or schools or programs should they be looking at?
Yeah, so it's going to depend on where you're going. So, for example, if you want to go into front-end development, which is the parts that you can see, there's a lot of websites that you can use to learn. There's there's this organization, I'm actually a board member now, the Viziola Foundation in Nigeria, that's teaching young women in the remote areas to code, and it's mostly front end. That's one of the easier fields to get into because you build it and you can see it right away. If you're doing more back-end databases, cloud, those like the resources I would recommend for that are different. If you're going to learn about the cloud, there was a site that I used to love called A Cloud Guru, which merged with Linux Academy, and I think now it's just all part of Pluralsight. So I would recommend learning about the cloud from that area. If you're doing backend, if you go learn Python, like I suggested, there's so many Python courses on Udemy, and they cost, Udemy always has sales. So if you see a course on Udemy and it's like $100, wait a week or two or Google for a coupon, because you can usually find the classes for under $20 during the sales. But when I thought I needed to learn Python for a job, I got a course that was supposed to take 4 weeks, and it was, I don't remember how much it cost, but it was under $50. And it had, it was well rated, for as a good way to learn Python. And with front end, I mentioned that front end, you do the HTML or the JavaScript and you see it right away. With things where you can't see it right away, where you maybe need a sandbox or a playground to do it, some of these services provide the playground. So looking at backend, for example, it's easy to build a website and see it, but it's not easy to do something in a database and see it, and setting up a database can take some time. So some of these sources will give you a playground. We call it sandbox, but a way to try out the skills that you're doing. And some of them will even provide you with an easy way to deploy in the cloud. Heroku is really good for that, for example, to say, okay, you don't need all the things AWS and Google Cloud give. You want to build something with a backend and a database. Here's a template for doing that. So it goes back to what I was saying about the transition will depend on where you are and where you want to go. So it's, let me find it. Yeah, the transition plan being unique. Just in answering your question, I've given multiple different examples, and I could give many more. So if any of you know which part you want to go, you can always message me and I can give you advice. But it's, the advice is more specific to where you want to go.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
Is there anyone else who wants to ask Bunmi any questions, please?
Yes, Dayo.
Okay. Hi, Bunmi.
Hi.
Thanks for the very educative presentation. Very nice and enlightening. So I'm just thinking that in transitioning, assuming that you haven't had any, depending on the background that you're coming from, is there a level that one can start from, or you have to go to the scratch? And assuming that you are, well, not assuming, considering that most of us are half a century, is that I know age is just a number, but does that affect anything? Does it affect the place that you would want to be in terms of, I don't know if you understand what I mean.
I think I do, but I'll give you an answer, and if I don't fully answer your question, clarify, and I will try again. My so everything that you know, I think even though the last few years have been tough in tech, I do think they will turn around. And when they turn around, I think we will need more tech people of all ages. You know, here in the US, there are people who have, you know, they want to retire and their companies say, please don't, we need you, you know, I mean, and so I do think that's going to, you know, that's going to, you know, that things will turn around. At least, you know, I hope so and pray so. And in terms of our age, you know, age is just a number, but being fully honest, there is still ageism in the industry. You know, I go out of my way to not let people know how old I am, you know, and because ageism can still be a problem, but I figure I can't change the fact that I'm, you know, a Nigerian Black woman who is now not young anymore. So I just look for ways to, you know, to address it, you know, and but if if any of you want to go, you know, want to go into this, like I wouldn't recommend, like I don't even recommend my young directs get masters, for example, because by the time you get that masters, technology has changed. So I recommend things like the boot camps, the online learning, so that you can learn quickly and start to apply it and determine what it is that you like and that you don't like. So if you know the parts that you're interested in, I say forget the age, learn it, try it. And if you don't like it, you've lost a few months, you know, or a year maximum, not multiple years. And in terms of, you said something about the level, it still is going to depend on the area. Like like I mentioned earlier, it's a little bit easier to get in front end, you know, to do front end work. It's harder to do infrastructure and DevOps work. You know, one interesting thing is growing up in tech, in the 90s, I would often be the only woman and maybe only person of color in rooms. And then it got more diverse and there were more of us. And now that I'm doing infrastructure and DevOps, I'm once again sometimes the only woman or person of color in rooms. At one job, it would be me and like 12 white guys in the room. And they were all nice. I didn't notice it. They noticed it, you know? And so and part of the reason I think that's the case is because it's hard to just try infrastructure out. With infrastructure, it's like the foundation of a house. And if you get it wrong, the house can come crashing down. But if you're doing front end stuff and you put a button in the wrong place or have the wrong color, it's a little bit easier to fix. So there are parts that you can get into where you can start out small and get better, like front end. And there are parts where if you get into it, you're gonna have to get deep to begin with, like infrastructure and maybe AI. So if that did not answer your question, let me know and I'll say more things.
Yeah, that did.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Dele.
Hi, Bunmi. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to add a little bit more to what Aya was saying. In my field, I'm in QA, and um, I have in my practice I have over 100 people, both direct and indirect, that report to me, and just to try to lay bare some of the things that you said. There is a 40-year gap between the youngest person in my group to the oldest person in my group, and they all provide value. We have a very robust internship program where we engage with universities for students who are just, finishing their degrees. Some of them don't have any idea about software other than they have a smartphone and they can go to Instagram or all the other stuff. That's the extent that they have. But there is a curiosity aspect to that
Yeah.
I think whether you're 20, whether you're 40 or 50, there's a curiosity aspect to that where we can introduce people even at that young age. And I'm actually finishing up an internship with somebody right now who I'm going to be flipping to a full-time employee who has 2 kids and studied to be a lawyer. She was a lawyer in a previous career. She's transitioning to an engineering group. So we bring them in as interns, train them in the fundamentals. Some of them, by the time they're done with their internship, they're already doing pull requests into GitHub, doing some coding because of the various different training programs that we take them through. So I want to encourage both support my colleague in Bunmi, but also and all those in the software industry, but also encourage everybody. It is possible. There are steps that you can do. I'd say 70% of my team are all remote, and they're spread across like 16 different countries all around the world. So I think that when you're starting off, there's a preference, I would suggest, to in person if that is an opportunity, because you can also learn by osmosis, being around people, be able to ask questions. But I wouldn't use that as something that is insurmountable. There are definitely opportunities that you can use, different learning aids that are available. Bunmi has mentioned several of them. Take advantage of them, and it is doable. I've taken at least a dozen interns in the heart of the pandemic, and I'd say half of them are full-time employees right now. And every single year we're going through that pipeline, finding new people, exposing them to the field, and we're having incredible results. Whether they end up being full-time, there's only so many open positions that I have, but whether they end up being full-time employees, but we know that even for those people who have gone into the industry to other companies, those other companies are benefiting from the foundational work that we started. So it's never too late, I guess, is what I'd like to mention to any one of you guys. It's never too late.
That was amazing. Thank you so much for everything you just said.
Welcome. And QA is a really good entry point. Let me say.
Actually, yes, that is so true, because when you start in QA, and Dele, you can say more, but when you start in QA, you're learning to test how the thing works. And so you're good in between the coders and product. And and then also QA, there are places that are looking to automate QA. So QA people sometimes learn enough coding to automate parts of the testing and then do the manual testing for the things that couldn't be automated. So QA is actually a really good field to go into. Yeah.
And it's a springboard into coding. You can be a developer, you can be a business analyst, you can go into a product owner. It is really a relatively low entry point, but still the opportunities that it opens up for you is incredible.
Yes. QA stands for quality assurance, in case that wasn't clear. So.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Oh no, I
lingo.
Software engineers also like a lot of acronyms. So.
Yeah, it gets into. I mean, Google uses the acronym SDET. So it's just software development. There's all different kinds of acronyms out there, but what it boils down to is you're a tester. It's not a derogatory term. It's you're told how something is supposed to work. So we call that requirements, and you create tests that validate that the requirements, and this is where it's doing what you want it to do, but also it's not doing what you do not want it to. And that's probably more the important part. Everybody wants to be able to drive a car. And you will drive the car, but what you also want to make sure that if a car has an autopilot feature, that it's not doing what you don't want it to do. That's the other part. Autopilot is, it's going to take you there, but autopilot is that you see something, does it avoid it? Yes, it should avoid it as opposed to plowing right into it. So if you have that kind of curiosity, QA is we can talk some more.
Yeah.
Put my little plug in for my field.
Oh, where do you work?
I work for a medium-sized global company based in Massachusetts. It's called Copyright Clearance Center. It's a medium-sized company where intellectual property holders, publishers, authors, and the likes come together, and they use our platform to manage the various different intellectual properties. So I just give a little small plug.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we were in college, we used to trug around, 16 textbooks in our bags, breaking our backs, going from one to the other. But in those textbooks for the different courses, the professor only taught maybe 6 chapters out of a 20 chapter book. But you bought the book, and you just kept it. And once you bought the books, those books were not inexpensive. You bought them, and then when you were done, you tried to sell them to somebody else, and then that person uses it for that same course, and they try to sell it to somebody else. And the publisher of the book, they sell that book to you once, and then that's it. Unless somebody else didn't have a chance to buy that book from somebody else, they have to go buy another brand new book. Well, let me bring your mind back to Napster. Napster is the music sharing company of several years ago. You only bought, from a music album perspective, you only bought the tracks that you wanted, and not the entire album. So with every course that you're taking, and this is just one of the aspects of the business that we offer, with every course that you're taking, the syllabus is already prepared before you even start the course. So you already know that you're only going to be taught 4 chapters out of the book. So what we do is to be able to allow the publishers to be able to have some kind of recurring revenue. We work with universities and various different things to be able to give them the license, the proper price page that the companies have, to be able to say, oh, I only want these 4 chapters, and I have 16 students. You just go to the library before the semester starts, and they would have prepared for you a little binder of just the thing that the professor is going to have. And that is usually not as expensive as buying 16 textbooks. And so that's just on the academic side. That's just one of the things that we do. We do a whole bunch of other things as well.
And to Daily's point, a lot of companies exist by finding the need, filling the need, and you'll sometimes be surprised at what, things that either you knew you needed and it finally exists, or that you didn't know you needed, but it improves your life so much that you're willing to pay for it. Who would have thought that we would be paying money to stay at strangers' houses like Airbnb, or getting into strangers' cars like Uber and Lyft, but those companies are worth billions now. And also, there are many companies that are doing things that people need that maybe aren't making billions, but you can think of companies that, you're really glad they exist, So I want to make sure if there are any other questions, I get to them.
I have a question. I can't find the hand raising thing this very moment. You said something that everybody could be a mentor, and that you have had an intern who was able to mentor someone. I'm switching that, flipping that on its side to encourage all of us to come and have these presentations. So could you speak to us a little bit about how come a mentor, an intern is able to mentor others? How that really worked in your experience?
Yeah, so most adults know some things and they don't know other things, right? So even an intern is going to come with some knowledge about some things, and they're there to learn the rest of the things. But so like with the intern that I was thinking about, she'd had experience in other fields and was switching to IT herself. And so she brought a way of viewing things that helped us work together better. And she became, even before she became a full-time employee, even as an intern, there were things that she was able to mentor people on. And so it's very easy to think to yourself, oh, I don't know this. But if we think deep, and I'm a person who has struggled with confidence most of my life, but if we think deep, there are things that we know that we can help people with. And so I always, remind, people that think about what it is, what your superpower is, what your differentiators are. And that may be something that you can help somebody else at. There's, I don't think he's on LinkedIn anymore, but there was this, I think his name was Joey Shakespeare, probably not his real name. But once he had a post on LinkedIn that, he's got 27 years of experience, and he told an intern how to do something, but that intern came back and said, well, is there a way we shouldn't do it this way? And the intern's way was a better, simpler, more elegant way to do it. So the young people, they bring up, I mean, interns aren't always young people, to be clear, because some of us may be interns, but we bring the advantage, they say two heads are better than one. The advantage of collaborations is you learn different things from each other. And so, yeah, sometimes interns are able to be the ones that are teaching. You're muted, DG.
Thank you so much, Bunmi.
Yeah.
So that to encourage everyone that there's something you can present on in one of the coming each one teach ones.
Yes, Soinda.
Okay, so this is a follow-up question to the question that was just asked.
Okay.
For those, so I'm putting you in your shoes, Bunmi. You're an executive, you're in an office, you have people who are looking to transition and who are looking to reach out to people. How would you prefer people to reach out to you, let them know, and it could be you or even Dele, anyone on the group chat, how do they approach you with this?
For people on this call or people in the world?
Or just generally people in the world, they have this idea, they want to transition, they're looking to reach out to people. What is an ideal way you would want them to reach out or advise them to reach out to people?
So everyone has their differences, their difference of opinions, but I would say that nowadays LinkedIn is a good way to do it. Don't just send a connection request, but say, I would like to connect with you because. The worst they can do is say no. And if they say no, you're not hurt, right? If you have an answer, the answer is definitely going to be no. And, if they say yes, then be mindful of their time and say, okay, this is what I want to talk about. Some will prefer to just chat about it. Some will prefer to get on a call. A few years ago, when I was looking for a new job at that time, my title then was senior manager. And and a bunch of my coworkers and friends said, why are you not applying for VP of engineering roles? And when I told them my reasons, they said it sounded like imposter syndrome. So I did informational interviews initially with people who had been VPs and left the job, thinking they would tell me, don't do it. But they said, try it, And, so I talked to those people, and I realized that most of the people that I talked to were men. Mostly white men, except for one that I think was Ethiopian. And I wanted to talk to more women, more Black men. And so I went on LinkedIn and I sent a bunch of connection requests to people who had that title, who I didn't know. Some of them I didn't even have any connections. And one of them on a Saturday even though he had a 10-month-old, he got on a Zoom with me the same day, initially scheduled for a half hour. We ended up talking for an hour. So there are people who are willing to help. And, and one of the first woman I talked to mentioned an organization called SheTO, which the entire point of the organization is to try to get more women in leadership roles. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I talk about SheTO all the time, and, and in there they're helping me, I'm helping them, but that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't just cold called people on LinkedIn. So I would say LinkedIn is a good way for that. For those of you on this call, you can message me on WhatsApp, but private message me, because I'll be honest that I'm not always keeping up with the whole big channel, And, but the same, just like I'm saying, you can message me, other people that you know personally, you can message them and see how they'd like to talk. I have Calendly, I pay for Zoom so that I can have conversations with people. Did that answer your question? And I think you have another one.
Oh, yeah, you answered my question. I don't have another one. That's it.
Oh, okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, I mean, there are other places to, like, when I was doing a presentation on DevSecOps for my company, there's a book that I really liked, and I wanted to ask the author if I could use the diagrams. He didn't reply to LinkedIn, but he replied on Twitter. So everyone's different, but when in doubt, try LinkedIn. If you don't try, then you may try Twitter, or Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok. I can't keep track of all the things that are around. I use LinkedIn and Facebook, that's, and then the Slack channels,
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to jump in one more time. I would say that this is wildly successful. I see Ayo on the call, and I just wanted to use the opportunity to thank him again for kicking it off last month. If you compare the number of people on today's call, it's fantastic. I think it's been a great presentation. We're really elevating the level of our conversation, the kind of interaction that we're getting to know each other better. And that's why I dropped in the LinkedIn chat. So we are looking for who's going to present next month, right? Floor is open. There's a lot of things we know a lot about. So please be in search of Mr. Olumide Balogun, who is the very able coordinator of this effort.
Yeah. And he's good about confirming your ideas, because I thought, well, will this talk be helpful? And Olumide said it would, and it has. So
yeah. Thank you.
So yeah. You want to wrap up?
Okay, can I just ask you a question, please?
Yes.
I mean, I don't want to be presumptuous about why Amazon Web Service will be more recognized.
You're little.
Sorry, Olumide, you are fading out there. Maybe want to move closer to the microphone.
Okay, can you hear me?
That's better. That's better.
Okay, so sorry, I was saying that my question is kind of like two questions in one. I don't want to be presumptuous to say the reason why Amazon Web Service will be more recognized when you've talked about Amazon working with Amazon Web Service earlier. I mean, I'm guessing it's because it's a big company, but I'm just wondering if you working with Amazon Web Service and you wanted, because you talked about also bringing in a marketer who doesn't necessarily have anything to do with IT per se, other than marketing that web service. So in what way would they go about marketing it? Because I'm just looking from a marketer's point of view, how would they market Amazon Web Service? Would you know?
So how they would market Amazon Web Services,
yeah, the website, because you'll be working, I presume you'll be working on creating the website. You'll be one of the creators of the website for Amazon. Would that be one of the services that you'll be rendering for Amazon?
Oh, no. So when I mentioned Amazon Web Services, I was mentioning them as a cloud provider.
Right. Okay.
So they have their own. So I don't know if this is answering your question, so let me know if I'm misunderstanding the question, but like Amazon Web Services has a whole marketing team. When they're trying to get people to market their services, How much they have to spend on that, I don't know, because even though there are many players in the market, they still have the market share. And so, but if I'm building a new website or app, you as the user don't care if I'm using Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud Platform or building my own thing. You only care about what it's doing for you. You care that it is up and running. You care that it is fast. And so I'm going to look for a cloud provider that, for the amount I'm willing to pay, is going to allow me to give the reliability and the speed and the things that you need, but you're not going to care which of those cloud providers I use.
Right. That's interesting. Okay, that's great. That's good to know. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much for that.
To follow on Olumide's question, though, if someone has a sales background, sales marketing background, could they get into tech sales and learn to be able to do that?
Definitely. In fact, one of my friends, when she was working, I think it was Okta, was trying to get me into tech sales there for a while. And that, again, that's a great question, because that's another way where, if you're already in sales or marketing, getting into tech sales is not as big a jump as if you were trying to learn coding, because you're understanding what it does, what the customers need, what kind of questions they may ask, and you're coming prepared to answer that and to convince them to buy your product. So yeah, tech sales is another good area to consider if you have a sales background.
Absolutely. That's great. Yeah, thank you very much. Does anyone else have any questions, please, before we wrap up for the day? Yeah, I think I can. Deji, if you would permit me, can we do we wrap up now, or is there anything else that you would like to say before we wrap up?
Yes, please, Olumide. Let's we can wrap up now.
Okay, so I mean, I know for sure that a lot of the things that you've said, Bunmi, has really opened my mind. I'm not really exactly in IT. You probably can source, but there's so many things that I kind of wanted to pick out from how, your topic was going to validate some things that I needed to know, because I feel like you said, I think you said it quite well, that there's hardly anything that you're doing that is going to keep you away from IT, whether you're directly working on IT or to be perfectly fair, there's no way you can run away from IT, even if it's just doing the very basics, in IT, or the level that you're at, and quite a few of you like Daly and Deji and the rest of the guys, some of the guys in the chat. So I feel like the way you've actually structured has been, not to assess you or anything, of course, but I feel like for me, I've really gained a lot, because I can see that there's still hope yet for quite a lot of us, and a lot of us that is not really quite directly into the core of IT, but then we can know that we can source for people that we can trust to help us do what we need them to do. And even doing the basics, we know that we can be covered, and we know that there's no getting away from it. So the earlier we start picking some basic things up, the better as well. I suppose some of us will be, like myself, will be quite accustomed to the basics, but the way you've just sort of like really, laid out all the information you've given us, quite a lot of them I've really sort of really grasped and really latched onto, because I feel like there's really no way getting around, there's no way getting out of IT. So it's ideal to start gaining and start learning and start picking things up, or start learning. And I feel like you've really opened that door. So I can't thank you enough. It's just been it's been the best way to really go about it for me. I don't know what anybody else thinks. I guess people will also comment the way the way what they've taken away from it. So I really thank you very much, and also considering
Clapping.
thank you so much. And also considering that it was such short notice, because I was sort of kind of like, I had to sort of change, the presenter around, and I needed somebody for February because I was kind of like somewhat, I mean, I was stuck, to be perfectly honest, for February at least. So I needed somebody that would really come along. So when I called, I kind of had an instinct that, you'll be very accessible, and the way you sort of took me on and just sort of like really supported to do this, and you were quite keen to do it as well, like wanting to help. I felt like, I mean, come on, this is the best luck I can ever get. So thank you so much. I'm really grateful for that. So I don't know what anybody else wants to say, but yeah, thank you so much, and I thank everybody also on this call.
Thank you all for the questions, and those of you who contributed, because again, no one knows everything. So thank you all for the contributions, those of you who contributed.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'd like to join Deji and Alumni to say a big thank you to Bunmi. I mean, one of the things we wanted to do, like Deji said, was really elevate the conversations we were having. And I think the beauty of all these presentations is at the end of the day, you can take these conversations in any way and apply it to, at least strike some thought into any facet of life, either for you, your kids, or your spouse. So yeah, and so thank you for doing this.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So that's all. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.